Welcome back to NewsNation Prime. Prayers answered for one of so many families with news that two Americans, a mother and her teenage daughter, were freed after being held captive by Hamas. Their family telling NewsNation they are eagerly awaiting their return to the U.S. and they are ready to help them.
So I spoke to my daughter. She feels good. She doesn't hurt.
We are assuming that there's going to be a long road to recovery, and we're going to be there with them every step of the way.
Yeah, can you imagine? This was the first news they had heard in more than 2 weeks, and they are free. There are questions tonight over the motive of Hamas here and what needs to be done now to free the around 200 remaining hostages, including a number of Americans. We are joined by NewsNation national security contributor Tracy Walder. She's also a former CIA officer and FBI special agent. Tracy, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And it really was something to hear from the family, and I cannot imagine what they've been through. I know you've closely been tracking this transfer this week, Hamas releasing these hostages just shy of 2 weeks into the conflict. What do you think the strategy was for Hamas behind this release?
I mean, I think the number one reason for this release was because they wanted to slow the ground invasion into Gaza. It doesn't show that there will be any signs of it stopping, and it looks like Israel really isn't having much of a reaction to these hostages being released. They were American hostages, which is obviously great news for me, being an American, but I think Israel probably most likely wants more than two Americans. They want all of the hostages free, and so I don't think that they are making any signals that they are going to be slowing this ground invasion. However, I do think that that was really what Hamas wanted. They're not going to free hostages without giving something in return. And Qatar was sort of the broker of this, if you will.
Yeah, let's talk more about this because we are in this moment of an impending ground invasion by Israel. Should the U.S. work to try to delay Israel's invasion so that negotiations can take place to free more hostages?
That's a good question, but it's a hard one to answer because, you have to look at what our place is. Is our place to tell Israel, to slow this invasion after they feel that they have been attacked? Or is it our place to sort of guide them through something that happened to us on our soil, 22 years ago, and how we should or shouldn't have responded to that? It really depends. I do think using Qatar as this intermediary is smart. It was interesting. I read a quote about them that explained them perfectly. Are they the region's firefighter or are they the region's arsonist, basically? So what is Qatar's role here? Because really Qatar harbors sort of some of these highest level Hamas fighters, Hamas administrators. And I think that's ultimately what Israel wants. So if Qatar is willing to sort of play ball game and hand some of them over to Israel, then I think Israel will back off. But I don't necessarily see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I want to ask you about the 10 Americans unaccounted for. Secretary Antony Blinken believes that a significant number of them are being held hostage by Hamas. How does it change the calculus or the international response if any of these American hostages are seriously injured or, God forbid, even perish while in the hands of Hamas?
No, I completely agree with Secretary Blinken in that they are most likely taken hostages. If not, they are most likely deceased. Those are really the two options that we're looking at there. And I think that's part of the reason, quite frankly, why the U.S. is getting involved and wanting to help slow this ground invasion is we want to keep track of our people and we want to keep our people safe. I do think that if ultimately some of these American hostages are executed, or really any other nationality, quite frankly, I do think you will see them sort of upping the ante. I know we are bringing in additional troops and we did bring additional warships in. And I think that this is a signal to Hamas, look, you need to let our citizens go, or else we are going to continue to really up our defenses in the region.
Yeah, any question in your mind that these American hostages would be of particular interest to Hamas?
Not that I can think of. I do know, they do have a relationship to a journalist here. And so I think that might be part of it. Hamas really is interested in utilizing, they're very much like ISIS in that they like to utilize social media, Twitter, TikTok, which is pretty horrific because we see a lot of these videos, but that is something they're very interested in doing is they skew a little bit younger. And so I am wondering if they knew that there was sort of some name recognition with who they are related to. And then this would go over as a little bit of goodwill and sort of gain sympathy for Hamas and what they're doing.
Okay, Tracy Walder, NewsNation national security contributor. Always appreciate the context. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.